that we have changed the definition of traditional medicine just to accommodate some of the things which were missing at that time, including the word non-codified. So that is what we have updated, upgraded in the new definition of traditional medicine. So still, we all remember, and thanks to this committee and this gentleman. So the journey of traditional medicine didn't start in WHO recently. It has been happening since more than 5 decades. And as you can see, in 1976, this group was created. In 1978, we had the Alma Ata Declaration, which emphasized on the importance of traditional medicine in the primary healthcare system. In 2002, we had the first WHO traditional medicine strategy, which was for a short term. And in 2014, we had the new strategy, which guided the world for the next decade till 2023 and was further extended due to COVID for the next 2 years and was with us till 2025. In 2018, we had the declaration of Astana, again emphasized the use of traditional medicine in the primary health care, and 2019 saw an important milestone when WHO started working on WHO ICD-11. ICD stands for International Classification of Disease. The 11th revision was being undertaken, and the first chapter on traditional complementary medicine was included in the form of traditional Chinese medicine, the Korean medicine, and the Japanese Kompo medicine. In 2019, we had a UN General Assembly declaration on importance of traditional medicine, and 2022 saw another landmark when we could establish the WHO Global Traditional Medicine Center in Jamnagar, India. In 2023, we had again UN General Assembly declaration in which it was emphasized that there is a need to integrate the traditional medicine for the primary healthcare network, at least to begin with. And 2025, we had the launch of the new WHO Global Traditional Medicine Strategy, which is going to be with us for the next decade. In between, we had 3 global surveys, and these are the glimpses of the recent survey which was done. And I'll not go into the details. I'll leave the slides with the organizers. You can access them if required. And as per this survey that we see, 116 member states across the globe have reported that they have regulation in place for the herbal medicine or the traditional medicine products, and several other parameters in the survey that we could see. More important than this, we could see that majority of the member states reported that there is dearth of data and there is a dearth of research and financing for research for traditional medicine. So it is not only for the traditional healers and traditional practices, there is overall crunch of funds or limitation of resources as far as the research in traditional systems of medicine is concerned. As per some of the articles which we received recently, nearly 1% of the funding goes for the traditional medicine research. So this is the state of affairs. That is why we are here to have a dialogue with the governments, with the stakeholders, so that this contribution can be increased and more emphasis can be made on TM research. So as far as the global scenario is concerned, we could try to map out the scenario of regulation of herbal medicine products across the 6 regions of WHO, and I'll not go into the details for other regions, but for the African region, we can say that 43% of the member states only have the regulatory provisions for traditional medicine. And regulation doesn't go without standardization. We heard our panelists in the previous discussion that standardization is an inherent part of regulation if we regulate the products from the perspective of moderate or high risk category products. And this standardization is from 2 prongs. So this standardization is from the perspective of the products, as well as standardization from the perspective of the way the National Regulatory Authority treats these products. Because we have seen from the panel discussion and otherwise also, different regulatory authorities have different ways, different parameters to assess the products and to ask for the regulatory requirements when the marketing authorization or registration is requested to them. So with a view to standardize the way in which the national regulatory authorities deal with these products, the registration of these products, we have tried to take up a journey of WHO Global Benchmarking Tool. So this is a tool which helps in evaluation of the national regulatory authorities, the way in which they deal with the products. So the regulation of the products, the registration and the marketing authorization. So as of now, WHO has WHO Global Benchmarking tools available for the pharmaceutical drugs, for the blood products, for the medical devices, as well as for the vaccines. So there is a proposal, and we have already started working on this journey to develop a WHO Global Benchmarking tool for the traditional medicine products. So why this is required? Because 170 member states have reported that they are using the traditional medicine products. but 128 countries have mentioned that they do have regulation, but we see a huge variation in the way the products are regulated across the globe. The huge variation in which the national regulatory authorities deal with such applications. So to deal with this variation and to categorize the countries in the way they regulate the products, I'll show you in the next slides how we will categorize these countries when this tool is in place. So the global benchmarking tool, which presently exists for the other four categories, has 9 sections. And these 9 sections deal with the requirements related to the national regulatory system. So when we evaluate the National Regulatory Authority, we see that what are the national regulatory system requirements. We see what is the registration and marketing authorization related requirements of the ministry or the regulatory authority. We see that how they perform the vigilance related actions, especially the pharmacovigilance or other material vigilance things. How do they do the marketing surveillance and control, the CMC practices? How do they have the licensing establishments in place? What are the requirements for the licensing? How do they do the regulatory inspections? What all parameters do they follow? Do they go for laboratory testing? What are the parameters which they follow? Do they have the clinical trial oversight? And of course, what are the parameters related to the NRA, the National Regulatory Authority lot release mechanisms? So when we discussed in-house, we could see that the NRA lot release is primarily not applicable to the traditional medicine products. And the figures that you see in the parenthesis mentions the number of indicators and sub-indicators. For example, for the clinical trials oversight, the existing WHO GBT has 6 indicators and 30 sub-indicators. So on the basis of these sub-indicators, we do the scoring and we categorize the regulatory authorities in 4 categories. So how this system of GBT works? First of all, the regulatory authority submits an application to WHO that we are interested in getting evaluated as per the WHO GBT norms, and then there is a self-check run, there is a self-benchmarking done, there is a pre-visit done by the regulators from the WHO and the other stakeholders, and based on this, an institutional development plan is made. After this, a regulatory inspection happens with the help of regulators and the WHO staff, followed which there is a performance evaluation and continuous evaluation process that happens. So this is not something which is one time, this is something which is an ongoing exercise and always keeps evolving. So after this inspection is done, well, we categorize the national regulatory authorities in one of these 4 categories. Maturity level 1 means that the systems are still evolving, as we saw on the panel discussion. Maturity level 2 means that the system is still existing, but there are some things which need to be patched up. Maturity level 3 means that there is an evolved system of regulation which is existing in the country, and maturity level 4 means that there is a robust system which is available, and this level is always evolving. So what I mean to say that the target is to achieve the maturity level 3 or 4 for the National Regulatory Authority which is dealing with the particular category of products. Now switching the gears and taking you to the traditional medicine strategy. By this time we are all aware. So this strategy was approved on 26 May 2025 during the proceedings of the 78th World Health Assembly in Geneva, and we are supposed to report to the World Health Assembly after a gap of 5 years before we conclude the strategy in 2034. During the strategy, this slide is just meant to assure that we had a global participation. So this strategy is not made in the 4 walls in Geneva. So we had the inputs received from across the globe, and you can appreciate that we had 1,235 comments along with several other inputs and documents which were shared with us during this process of drafting. And especially from the African region, we received 97 comments which were quite appropriate, and almost all of them were taken care of during the strategy formulation. So these are the updated definitions. I'll not go in the details because it will consume a lot of time, but again would like to enforce and emphasize to focus on the word non-codified getting included in the traditional medicine definition. So this is the vision, the goal, and the objectives, the directions, how they flow in the strategy. This has been already taken care of by Dr. Tito yesterday in his presentation. I'll not encroach upon this. Well, these are the strategic objectives. By this time, we all remember the 4 strategic objectives. Each strategic objectives come with 2 directions. I'll focus myself to the regulatory mechanism, which is the strategic objective 2 in the new strategy, and it comes with 2 directions. First direction 2.1 related to traditional medicine products, and the second direction related to the traditional medicine products and practice and practitioners. So we are dealing with both these facets today. The good thing is that each of the directions comes with some things to be done, some resolutions, some commitments, some suggestions. So each direction like for example, traditional medicine products will come with some actions for the member states, some actions for the non-state actors and the NGOs or the other stakeholders, and some actions for the WHO also. So we kept some homework for WHO also while drafting this strategy. It is not that everything is on the member states or the other partners. So I'll quickly go through the suggested actions or the recommendations or the requirements that we like to see from the member states regarding the regulation of TM products. So we look forward to the member states to establish the norms and standards. This is what we have been discussing. If you have your norms and standards well and good, otherwise you can join hands with the other aligned partners to adopt the other norms and standards. Well, you need to have evidence-based regulatory decision-making mechanism in your regulatory authority, especially for the TCIM products. You need to emphasize on the risk-based approach as we have been discussing today, and we look forward to the member states for having restrictions on the use of endangered species. I'm happy that Dr. Sikagia presented before me, so my job is easier when I'm dealing with the endangered species. And we encourage the sustainable practices in the production, supply, and use as well as disposal of TCIM products. So participate in the WHO IRCH. This is something which has been repeated time and again. And again, I will use this podium to call the member states, especially in the African region. I was going through the IRCH documents and I could see that out of the total number of member states from the Afro, only 10 member states as of now are parts of WHO IRCH network. So there is a call, there is a suggestion for the other member states to join this network, and this will help in mutual sharing of the practices, the problems that we face, and the opportunities that we can have together. So talking about the actions for the partners and stakeholders, well, we look forward to their involvement heavily in taking up this task, and we request them to help us in devising the regulatory mechanisms, be a part of the committees, be a part of the initiatives, help us in training the manpower, help us in creating the norms and standards, help us in taking care of misleading advertisements, and help us in taking care of the risk management of TCIM products. Of course, needless to say, the biodiversity and conservation requirements, we look forward to your handholding. And now the task at our end. Of course, WHO is also committed to contribute in this initiative, and we are committed to work on the WHO International Herbal Pharmacopoeia. I'll have a couple of slides later to delve further on this. So we were talking about the need of standards, we were talking about the British standards and all other things which are creating some issues among the stakeholders. Well, WHO is already embarked upon a journey to create the WHO International Herbal Pharmacopoeia, which would take care of the existing herbal pharmacopoeias across the globe, and we would try to come out with a document that lays emphasis on the convergence of the parameters and the standards which are already existing. And that pharmacopoeia which is created by WHO can be or would be available for adoption as a legal document by the member states subject to their technical and ecosystem or biodiversity requirements. So WHO is committed to develop guidelines, technical documents, and tools, I mean to say the WHO GBT and other tools to support the regulatory frameworks. And we are working on standardizing the terminology. Some of the terminologies have already been standardized and they appear in the new strategy. We are having another project in pipeline in wherein we are trying to standardize the remaining terminologies so that there is a coherence across the member states. And we will leave no stone unturned in increasing the partnership and membership of the WHO IRCH. The dream is that all those member states who have regulatory provisions in place should be a part of WHO IRCH so that we have a forum where for 2 or 3 days we get an opportunity to learn from the regulators, learn from each other so that we can mutually evolve. So with this, I switch the gears to introduce you to the topic of WHO ICDRA. ICDRA stands for International Conference of Drug Regulatory Authorities. So this is again a forum of WHO, of the drug regulators, and those in the business of regulation would be knowing this, familiar this. And the only reason why I introduce you to this conference, this forum here, is that in October 2024, during this meeting of WHO ICDRA, we got an opportunity to have a session on traditional medicine regulation also. So this is a welcome regulation, and this is something which is a testimony to the convergence of the two systems and the true integration which is poised to happen in the times to come by virtue of this new strategy. So in this conference, we resolved that we all will work together for augmenting the regulatory scenario across the globe for the regulation of TCIM products. So, switching the gears to WHO, International Regulatory Cooperation for Herbal Medicines, you are now familiar with this. It was started in 2006. In 2017, WHO became the formal secretariat for this, and the head of the unit for norms and standards in WHO is the chairperson. And you heard Dr. Neil Gover today morning in his video message. He is the vice chair of this network. So, this network presently takes care of nearly 55 members representing the member states as well as the non-state actors and the other NGOs who are involved in regulation of TCM products. So we look forward to a growing network. We usually have one annual meeting of WHO IRCH, and we have 3 working groups to develop the capacity among the regulators, and we have at least one training workshop of each of the 3 working groups every year. So we recently had the 16th annual meeting of this network in Jakarta, Indonesia, and we look forward to having another meeting in the Q4 of this year. The place is not yet decided, but it is the right time. The time is ripe for all the African member states, at least the East African member states, to come forward. You can write to us, express your desire and consent to be a part of this August network. So this is about WHO International Herbal Pharmacopoeia. So this journey has been in place since nearly 2 to 3 years, and we had the first meeting of the expert group in Hong Kong in November 2024, and we are looking forward to another meeting of an augmented research group in March this year. And this pharmacopoeia is aimed at creating an ecosystem where the member states who do not have their herbal pharmacopoeias, they can adapt and make this a legal document in their member states. It is, of course, aimed at ensuring the safety, quality, and efficacy of herbal medicines and harmonizing the global standards, provide a reference document to the low medium income countries, and to facilitate the global trade and regulatory convergence. This would be a voluntary document. If required, the member states can definitely adopt this and make it mandatory. Well, this is a process in which we are facing some challenges. Why I need to say challenges to this forum is that because we look forward to the contribution of the stakeholders. We'll try to reach out to all those who are interested and would like to contribute in this. While formulating the International Herbal Pharmacopoeia, we are encountering several dilemmas, like, for example, should we go for laboratory tests to establish the parameters, or should we rely on the already published pharmacopoeias which are existing across the globe? So should we go and only harmonize the existing reports in the different pharmacopoeias, or should we subject the herbs to fresh laboratory investigations? Well, this is a matter of discussion. There can be different views and opinions, but we are yet to resolve this. There are differences in species, the varieties across the country. When we try to prepare the standards of a particular herb, that herb may be existing across 6 continents or 5 continents. So do we need to have different monographs or standards for the herb growing in different continents and different countries? Or is there a way to standardize? If I talk about mango, there might be 1,000 varieties of mangoes. How do I prepare a standard for mango in one go, which takes care of all 1,000 varieties? Well, this is a question to ponder. I hope we will come to an answer and consensus with the support of groups like you. Similarly, how to transfer the plant material if we go for laboratory investigations? How do we take care of commonly used herbs? Whether should they be the priority, means how do we prioritize? Because International Herbal Pharmacopoeia is not something that you publish one book and the job is over. There are thousands of plants used in the traditional systems of medicine. How do we prioritize for the first volume, the second volume, the third volume? Maybe the priority can be the commonly used herbs or commonly present herbs across the different pharmacopoeias. How should we go for raw material versus finished product formulation? Should we go with the raw material standardization only, or should we embark upon the journey with the finished formulations as a part of the pharmacopoeial approach? So with these dilemmas, just to share with you that the job is not easy at our hand, but we are committed to deliver something as the time proceeds. And we look forward to your involvement. And your involvement would be more effective, more available, more productive, and more useful, more timely if you are with us in the IRCH network. So join us in IRCH. And last slide from my side, WHO reference documents which are under development. I was given the task to share with the audience that what I will be working on. So we are working presently from the norms and standards department perspective. We are working on developing a guidance document, how to formulate the essential drug list for traditional medicine products in your country. As per the survey, we came to know that 34 countries across the globe have already published their essential drug list on herbal medicines, but there are other countries which need to do this, so we need to develop a guidance document for them. We are trying to prepare a training manual for the quality control testing of herbal drugs, and we are preparing technical reports on several topics, including training in Siddha, training in practice in Siddha, training in cupping therapy, practice in cupping therapy, and several other such documents. You might be aware that already WHO has published the benchmarks for training and practice in Ayurveda, Unani, and traditional Chinese system of medicine. So we are working for WHO ICHI for traditional medicine. ICHI stands for International Conference on Harmonization of Health Interventions. So what we need to do from the diagnostic perspective, we have the WHO ICD, International Classification of Disease, but International Classification of Health Interventions does not exist for the traditional medicine interventions. So we are trying to embark upon a journey. MOU is done, and we are already started working on this with the stakeholders, and soon you will see classification of the health interventions from the traditional medicine perspective. And guidance on guideline development in traditional medicine, how to develop guidelines for traditional medicine. This document will help the member states how to develop a guideline following the WHO norms. And of course, the research methodology in traditional medicine. We know the tools for research methodology are not the same when we are evaluating the biomedical products and the traditional medicine products. We understand this. And that is why we are working on a document how to differentiate what are the customization required when we talk for the requirements of the research methodology to validate or to scientifically validate the traditional medicine products and practices. So with this information, I conclude my presentation. Thank you for your patience. I know I'm standing between you and the lunch, but if you want to satiate your emotional hunger or your wisdom hunger, you're welcome to ask questions. If you want to satiate your physical hunger, well, the lunch is waiting for you. Over to you. So over to you. Please help us in taking the questions. And Young Cup and Pauline, probably there are some questions from online participants. Help us in addressing those questions.
Maybe we can give the opportunity to the online participants. Any question? Maybe we can take one or two.
You can read out from there itself. Yeah.
Yes, there's some questions online, but some are related to the previous session. One is, I would like to see how strategically the Africa region, ESC, will contribute to the WHO library.
What is the next question?
The next
I have a couple of slides on the library later instead of the IP.
Okay. So I'm told that regarding this library, Dr. Tito has a couple of slides which he would be presenting. So you can write to that online enthusiast that please hold on, please be with us. We would have a presentation on the Traditional Medicine Global Library.
The other question was directed to the Pharmacy and Poisons Board in Kenya. How is the board collaborating with the other East African community partners to harmonize standards?
Dr. Ali, would you like to answer? Please pass on the mic. Can you repeat the question?
Given the PPB's mandate to ensure the safety and efficacy of health products, what specific regulatory frameworks are currently being implemented to standardize the regulation and quality control of traditional and complementary medicines in Kenya, and how is the board collaborating with other East Africa community partners to harmonize these standards?
Is Dr. Ali here right now? Okay, we will take up this question after a few minutes. Any other question from the audience? Dr. Lakasa, is it a question or a comment?
Yes, through all your presentation.
Yeah.
That will be. I follow. We didn't see financial support aspect of the WHO. Only if I couldn't see the slides. Because all people rely on WHO to develop specialists. And relying on you is to rely on finance.
True.
But even in our countries, when you go to WHO office with your proposal, they say there's no money. They say we only do technical support.
Yeah.
So without money, and you are the only people who those more partners. And you say you don't have money. Why would you get money? That's my question.
I would prefer if this forum is kept at a serious and, uh, this is not the way to make fun of everything. So let us be serious in discussion. This is a serious question. What is the need to laugh on this? Well, thank you for raising this, but this is a session on regulation, right? I am supposed to deliver a talk on regulatory provisions and what WHO has done in the aspect of domain of regulation. How do we need to augment? What are the ways and means in which we can strengthen each of the member states and work together for augmenting the regulation related to traditional medicine products, practitioners, and practices? The finance part is not related to this presentation or this session, but since you have raised this question, well, this is a valid concern. Of course, no research activity and no such strengthening activity is possible without financial support. That is why we are here, and we had a discussion yesterday with the Honorable Cabinet Secretary and his team. And if there is a commitment from the member states, as I told you yesterday, there is a commitment, written commitment from 27 member states across the globe, out of which 12 are from Africa. So we have a commitment from the governments who have committed that they will work forward towards implementation of the strategy. If the governments have committed to work for the implementation of the strategy and its objectives, of course, needless to say that they are committed to shell the funds for that. And as far as the funding from WHO is concerned, of course, we have the WHO representative, officer, Dr. Edwin, sitting here with us from the WHO country office, Kenya. So probably these things need to be moved from the respective WHO country offices to the WHO headquarters in the global center. So this is not the forum for me to make announcements of financial contributions from WHO. So I think we should limit our questions and restrict the questions as per the domain and contours of the session topic. These discussions are not welcome during a technical session. And these are the discussions to be taken up by the member states through their respective WHO country offices. Thank you. Any other question? Please keep your question related to the session and pinpoint it. Yeah, you need to have mic from someone.
Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Taban Specially, and I am here on behalf of my Museum of Heritage, as regards ICH and also traditional medicine. Mine is mostly a comment and an observation from this well-organized, well-structured forum. So I want to say thank you for those who have organized for this. The flow was very well done, and it ends with some lessons that we carry home for us as they call us traditional herbalists, and we are also within the health space. Now, as I say that, I want to look at two things, just 2 points. Point number one is policy alignment came out very clearly in this particular forum. And I think also when Dr. Lydia talked about it, I think we have also seen the issues of policies, but even a policy or what the CS paper or bill in Parliament, to me, not even related to this, because it's about healthcare and patient care. But here we are talking about traditional, complementary, and integrative medicine, TCIM. As I say that, TCIM, very clearly from these presentations, links very well with WHO integration. Very clearly, it came out very clearly. United Health, Universal Healthcare, and shared realities in Kenya. Patients cannot access healthcare. There are a lot of challenges. 3, ICH safeguarding. Kenya is a member state of various treaties and conventions, and here we have a problem. When even our diversities are treated, trees are being cut, rivers are being polluted. And the last, the speaker who talked about species, and they brought that very well. And then biodiversity protection. We really need also to engage and also connect traditional medicine to biodiversity and conservation. And lastly, county and national policy frameworks. We also need counties to be supported in the same frameworks if we are to move forward. Now, in the topics are aligned to policy and regulatory framework. And when I look at it from more than in all the topics in this particular brochure, then there are models we have learned, there are models we can learn from, there are countries we can learn from. Tanzania, Uganda are very good models that we have now in this room. We also have recommendations, very, very critical recommendations for this country. I want to talk about Kenya, right? Because when we learn from Uganda and Tanzania, I think I feel we are a little bit behind. So finally, I want to say the case studies of Uganda, Kenya, and we also see Uganda with the political will of the president of Uganda. And we also want to say, for us, Kenya, let us leave this room today, learning from that model shared by ECOWAS. Let us get the ECOWAS model, sit down as Kenya, say how do we copy that model because it fits Kenya squarely. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And I would again request, please take the mic if you have a question. We are left with last 2 questions, not more than this. Please.
Well, thank you very much. Daktari, I'm going to focus on your presentation, although it is also going to touch on what has been presented earlier, and in particular during the panel. One of the concerns raised is about generation of evidence. And this is through determining efficacy and safety of the products. You have talked about building personnel capacity. I wish to know what process are you going to follow for us to assist you in building this personnel capacity. In addition, I wish to know whether you wish also to build capacity on equipment, because you may be having personnel capacity, but you don't have equipment to do various analysis. I want to leave it at that. I am Dr. Jeroge. I'm a medical expert in phytotherapeutics from Cognizant.
Thank you so much. Very valid question. Quick answers to this. Number 1, as far as capacity building is concerned, I'll keep myself focused. I cannot answer on all the topics, but as far as this session is concerned, let me focus to the regulatory capacity building. That is why over a half a dozen times in my presentation, I have invited, requested, and suggested the member states to come and join the WHO IRCH network. The moment you spend time 2 to 3 days with all the regulators from across the globe who are regulating the traditional medicine products, the capacity is automatically built. Moreover, as I told, we have 3 working groups in this WHO IRCH network, one dealing with the safety, one dealing with the quality, and one dealing with the clinical efficacy. So once you attend the workshops of these working groups, of course, the capacity is built. And we have already done this since last 2 years. After COVID, we have been doing this, and we look forward to having more such workshops. So this is one way in which the regulatory capacity is being taken care of through the WHO network. Again, time to time, there are several other events, several other conferences, workshops where we have dedicated sessions on particular topics where we aim at developing the capacity. For example, in recently organized one of the events, there was a dedicated session on pharmacovigilance for traditional medicine products. So these initiatives are aimed at capacity building only. And as far as the enriching or equipping the laboratories are concerned, I mentioned you that we are trying to develop a guidance document from WHO how to enhance the quality of the people who are involved in the testing, quality testing of the herbal drugs. So this is one domain, but I know you are referring to the equipment supplementation. Again, your question goes to the financing provisions. Of course, these provisions are available, but then the member state has to approach to the country office WHO and the 3-tier network, the channel has to be followed for that. There can be provisions by virtue of some projects, there can be provisions by virtue of some MOUs, some collaborations, some partnership agreements, some donations, some handholdings. There can be different provisions. There are mechanisms that exist. The only thing is to join hands become a part of the family, start interacting with the fellow regulators. Of course, there would be ways and means to develop further. So your question well taken, but the means are already existing. We just need to be oriented, we just need to be aware, and we just need to be a part of the initiatives that WHO is taking already. Thank you. The one last question, if there is any. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much, Doctor. Yes, my name is Dr. Team. I'm actually an botanist. My question is in regard to WHO. Most of when you're dealing with what we call the role of patients, it's what we call the intellectual property right. Now, as we try to bring to do this, what we call this integrative, TCIA, when you do what you say, formally found pathways between the traditional.
Can you be a bit precise, because I could not follow what you said earlier? Keep your questions short, please.
In regards to what I may say, WHO traditional medicine strategy for 2025 to 2034. So I don't know how possibly you are trying to position it also within TCIM within East Africa. Is there a way you can do the capacity building so that they can, contribute globally in terms of biodiversity, medicine, by assisting in what you call capacity building in terms of manufacturing hubs? Thank you. Or repositories.
Thank you so much. I get your question. And in my last answer, I forget to mention one thing which will help in taking care of your answer. Well, there is another thing which I mentioned. I'll keep my answers focused to the regulation only. So apart from IRCH network, there is another provision by which WHO Norms and Standards Department is offering the capacity building avenues. That is through a venue called Inter-Regional Training Workshop. So every year we are organizing an inter-regional training workshop, and we invite the participants or the enthusiasts from across the globe, across the 6 regions. And this conference is again likely to happen in 2nd or 3rd quarter of this year in Macau. So that is what I am saying. Once you join hands, then only you will come to know of these things. Otherwise, these things are happening, but many of the people I see are not aware that WHO is into all these capacity building exercises and workshops. And these IRTW, the Inter-Regional Training Workshop, every year we rotate it between the 2 topics. One year it is related to the products, one year it is related to the practices and practitioners. So this time it is the turn of practitioners and practices which we are going to take up. So this is one way. What was your other question regarding manufacturing? Yes, for the manufacturing also, the answer goes into these 2 networks, means IRTW and IRCH. Once you are with the regulators, you will come to know, you will have interaction with the industry partners, you will have interaction with the other stakeholders, and then of course, you will have an insight that what are the ways and means to augment the capacity of manufacturing. Moreover, you must be aware of WHO good manufacturing practices for herbal medicines. That is one-stop solution to achieve a high level of good manufacturing practices for production of the traditional medicine products. So there are things available like WHO International Herbal Pharmacopoeia, which is coming up. This is also going to contribute in standardization of herbals. So there are ways and means. Please interact. This should not be the one and first and the last interaction between you and WHO. I would like to see that you all who had so many questions would be with us in several other forums in the times to come, so that we are able to work together to take care of all the issues that you have in your mind. Thank you so much. In case you have more questions, I would like to skip my lunch, but let not everybody skip their lunch. So I hope the organizers can allow us to proceed for lunch.
Housekeeping. Let's appreciate Dr. Pradeep.
I thought she has some gift for us. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So thank you, Dr. Pradeep, Dr. Sekagia.